This isn't really a retrospective into what we saw last year and talking about it. This is more based on analyzing all the data that we saw throughout the year, especially the data that was increasing in trajectory and kind of making these predictions into 2018. And so this is something that Shutterstock's been doing for about 7 years, this Creative Trends report. It's actually really extensive, and it's not just as simple as saying, hey, this search term increased, X amount % year over year. We do share that data and have that data, but there's a lot more, thought and care and kind of, deliberateness that goes into analyzing these trends with a much broader team beyond just the pure, data analysis. The first trend that we've noticed is fantasy. Of course, you're already starting to see this one out there. I think this is one that we can all kind of agree. And this is a unique one because this is really, unicorns, mermaids, whales that can fly, mythical mushrooms, anything that you can kind of think of. That is what, is possible under this trend and kind of visual element of fantasy. But it could also be, aerials in Iceland, a forest in Norway, things that kind of pull us in and maybe feel far off, but are a little bit more approachable in scope. And then, of course, on the music end, this is where we're seeing things that are a bit, orchestral in nature and just kind of have that very powerful feel that really draw you in. Next up, we have new minimalism. And this is kind of a unique one, tapping on the modest roots of minimalism and kind of giving them this modern touch. We saw a 432% increase in searches for continuous line, 387% in neon circles. And this is something that we're seeing used as overlay. So perhaps there's an existing asset and they're using, kind of new minimalism and a lot of, these kind of elements and features to kind of bring that to life and create, a whole new feeling and landscape, added texture, kind of continuous loopable sounds. From the music end, we're seeing that kind of sound being used in a lot of corporate tech, and that actually is kind of one of the search terms that we're seeing is like corporate tech, where you might see the Apples and the Googles kind of using this new minimalism sound and kind of touching on like these loops that can just kind of go on a continuous run. Next up is space. In this one, as you can tell, what I think is really unique is you're already starting to see a little bit of a connective thread in the trends, and we'll see that throughout, and that's something that sticks out to me as we rolled out this report where they're all very different in scope, but they all do have a little bit of this connected thread. And with SpaceX in our backyard as well and sending a Tesla into space, this is one of those trends that I think is already very, very present in our world. But it's unique from a content perspective because it is something that can often be dark and mysterious and a little dystopian and kind of, almost fear of the unknown. But I do think because of what's going on in mass media and pop culture and with SpaceX and a lot of, more deliberate moves towards space exploration, I think it's becoming a lot more approachable. And I think by nature of that, there's a broader audience and people who are interested. And of course, with, what we're seeing with Star Wars, Star Trek, it's already out there. Next up is punchy pastels. I think this one's really fun. The pastel color palette historically isn't something that gets folks too excited, but I think this one is purely touching and pulling on nostalgia, bright, rebellious, candy-style colors, cotton candy, lollipops, donuts. These are all elements that you're seeing a lot more. Just being incorporated into all types of design elements. As you saw, some of the first few trends that we looked at, they were a little bit darker, they were a little bit more dystopian, they're a little bit more kind of pulling you away, where I think this is just something that's fun and bright and engaging. It's, kind of feels like a beach party or, an aerial shot of Miami with all of its unique kind of Art Deco design and color. Next up is Global March, and this is just a hyper important message that's continuing to reverberate internationally. At Shutterstock, we saw a 660% increase in International Women's Day. 540% in activism. And this spans across all mediums. You know, you're seeing this message in art, film, theater, writing. You know, corporate brands are using it, of course, in films, documentaries. We're seeing a lot of, you know, a blend of editorial content and commercial content to kind of have this unique storytelling narrative that's much more, you know, uplifting and powerful. Next up, we have digital crafts. As we all move fast, I think we're craving for those, you know, moments where, hey, I wish I could sit and fold paper and make origami, you know, or make my own paper crafts at home. However, a lot of us don't have that luxury, and especially if we're sitting in an editing bay, you know, how do we incorporate those elements into our projects, and how do we give a little nod to the nostalgia and the time that we spent building these crafts? When you're looking at ancient geometrics, you know that these are things that take time, you know, and sometimes it's repetitive in nature, but it's something that requires a lot of patience. There's a lot of more traditional kind of Indian music that's being incorporated. You know, think of spas and meditation and wellness centers and kind of the music and the design elements and the graphics that they're using. It's also, you know, a little psychedelic in scope too. And so that's something that I think is really touching on all those different nostalgia elements, but bringing it into, you know, a modern world. As cryptocurrency goes mainstream, no matter where you stand on it in terms of being invested in it, not being invested, following along, you know, that's obviously to each their own on that regard. You know, everywhere you look, you're hearing about blockchain, cryptocurrency. It is going to be a trend for 2018 in terms of just how it's incorporated, spoke about, and covered, you know, on a mass media level. This is the one that we think is going to absolutely explode in 2018, and it's called holographic foil. And so this is a unique one that, again, like really kind of has the space age feel, a touch of nostalgia. And we see this exploding across all different kind of areas and mediums because it's nostalgia, but it's fresh and it's new. And it's also something that could kind of match with high culture or low culture. There's a lot of prisms and light leaks, you know, that are incorporated into this and in terms of added elements. You know, almost has the vibe of watching, you know, a liquid light show or, you know, a lava lamp and kind of some of those elements that, again, I think touch on the nostalgia, but are also becoming a bit more modernized in film production and creative design and branding. Shutterstock is in a unique space where we license content out, but we also bring content in. And so not only do we see the content that's being searched and downloaded and licensed, but we also see the content that people are shooting out on their own and submitting to Shutterstock for licensing. So we have this really unique understanding when looking at the trends of, you know, not only what is, you know, seeing demand and interest in the marketplace, but also what folks are actually interested in going out and creating on their own. Cool, thank you.